What happened was I taught myself to do metal sculpture under an apple tree in Pennsylvania, looking down a hill in the cornfields, going down into a river. And it was
What
unique,
year?
but I did. Uh, what happened is I just got back. I had a terrible accident, in Mexico, and I ended up in this place, and it was on a 2-acre old farmhouse, and it was built in the 1700s, and my my father-in-law at the time lived in it, and he was a scientist, and he was one of the top scientists in the country because his ideas, he sort of ushered in the 20th century with his ideas, and they're being used now, and he's recognized, and but he didn't want to know. He didn't want any kind of recognition, really. He always said that you get what you need. But anyway, what he did is he sort of worked on computers and all kind of knew whatever was going on, and he developed things that we appreciate now. So anyway, I had 28 years with him because I got into an accident and his daughter got killed, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life because I had just quit the airport, which I worked for several years, and I ran Tampa International Airport with all the loading, cleaning, and everything. I was like a supervisor, and they gave me all kind of jobs because I was creative, and I always ended up figuring out how to do it. And it was the new field, man. Jet aircrafts had just started. I used to do the restips and all, back when, in the old days, when you had to get up on the wing and scoot across it and fuel and fall off the wing sometimes and all that kind of stuff. It was craziness. Well, I did that, and then we got into Tampa International Airport, and they developed that, and I had to teach everybody how to do it, and I was one of the teachers, and they sent me all over the place to teach everywhere else, and I was doing well, and I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and I went to Mexico, and I took a school bus, and I decked it out, and we drove down to Mexico, and had a beautiful time. And we ended up in a place called Sayulita, and I sort of met a fisherman, an Indian fisherman, and I couldn't understand much of his language. He spoke a little bit of English, and anyway, he was a shaman actually of of an Indian tribe, a part of the Mayan, Indians, but whatever they were there. They were mixtures, and also Spanish, and so I couldn't understand because I didn't speak that kind of language, and anyway, I could sketch pictures and that kind of thing. So we communicated a bit, and he came to my campsite, which incidentally I was camped next to Pancho Villa's villa, which was, shoot, what a place, right on the Pacific Ocean, and we got our school bus, and we got special permission to park it there by introduction to the mayor and everybody else because we were friends of somebody else and my sister-in-law. So we had this beautiful place, and we're in a bus, and this guy comes up to me and he offers, I smoke cigarettes and a pipe, and that's all I did. I was working in airlines, and I had to do things, I had to keep my mind straight. So I'm sitting there, and he hands me a pipe at the campfire. He sits, kneels down like an Indian does, sitting right next to the campfire and all. I'm sitting there, and he hands me a pipe after he smokes it, hands it to me, and I smoke it, and that's different. I never, what kind of tobacco is that? But I couldn't talk to him because I couldn't understand him. So he just, and then he handed me another hit, and I said, yeah, I'll take a little more. So, okay, fine, everything's cool. And he's sitting there, and all of a sudden he hits me. And I said, yeah, okay. And we're heading towards the beach, and there's a river, by the way, going down into the, coming out of the mountains, and it's got clay all in it. And I'm watching, and I see that it's the Pacific's right there, and the sand's there, and the river's hitting it, and I could see it crashing. And I'm looking at that, and then all of a sudden he's telling me to come with him, and we're walking down the beach, you know. And he starts telling me jokes, and I'm laughing like hell, man. I'm sitting there, God. And then he tells me some other things, and then all of a sudden I realize, I said, I don't know how to understand. I'm not moving my lips. We're mental telepathy here. We even recognize each other's personalities. We don't even have to talk. We're just like you and I right now. Just and you can make your gestures and everything, but you'd understand each other perfectly. And he tells me how he lives and how and he comes up to these girls that were in the water, and they had Clorox bottles, and they had this line around it, and they had hooks on it and bait, and they swirl it around and throw it out in the surf, and they'd come off like a spinning reel off the thing, and they had a little rod, and they'd stick it in under the water, and guess what? They were their fishermen, and then he called them his secretaries. And what they did was they were his cooks, his fishermen, and he had this village in the middle of Sayulita, beautiful place. And anyway, he took me up into the mountains and showed me things that I never even dreamed about. And he told me about things about the Indians, and it was amazing. I never even thought about it. So guess what? He invites me to breakfast the next morning at his restaurant. And I say, okay, I'll do it. And I came in, and I had my family with me because they were gone at the time when this happened. And I go into the restaurant, and I can't understand a word anybody's saying because anyway, and he's running around. It's, God, what a feast. It was like a huge table with lobster and guava and this and that all over the table, and everybody just came in and grabbed a plate, and you come back, and they kept putting more on. And anyway, what a neat place. And I'm sitting there, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. And he finally comes back over to me, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he looks me square in the eye, and he winks. And that's all I needed, and I understood what he said. And then, we took off, and the end result of this trip was amazing. I went into the ruins, and I studied for 3 years and went like in the jungles of Mexico. It was really amazing. And in the end, I had an accident. Not me. Somebody else was driving my bus. I was in the back, and then I got up, and a Coca-Cola truck hit it head on and killed my sister-in-law, and my daughter and my wife went one way, and I went another, and I had a Hodaka motorcycle, dirt bike on the back of my bus, and I took it, and I went up the mountain, and guess what? All the Indians came out of the jungle, and they're all stealing the cokes off the coke truck that had turned over. And here I am. We almost went off the side, which is a 1,000-foot drop, and the bus hit the mountain going up and teeter-tottered back over this way, my school bus, which was decked out as a camper, and it looked sort of military. Anyway, and it was teeter-tottering. And I had to pull, it tore the side off of the bus, and I had to pull her body out, and her husband took her to the hospital trying to save her, and they went, and an angel came off a bus at the scene of the accident and came over to us and said, "You guys are in trouble. I'll be here with you to the end." I didn't know what was going on, and she took my wife and daughter into another town, and I took off on that, off the back of the boat. It was teeter-tottering, and I got it off, and I went up this side of the mountain, way up to the top, and I watched the Indians take all the cokes, and they went over to my bus, and it was so teeter-tottering that they ran away. So they didn't mess with nothing in the bus. So then I waited till everybody cleared up, and all the commotion's gone, and I came back down the mountain, and I knew which way they took Judy, and I figured that's where I got to go, where she is, going to the doctor to see if they. I knew she was dead. I'd already checked her. Anyway, I took my, and I couldn't speak enough. It was in the jungle town in Tuxpan, Mexico. That, back in those days, it was pretty, you know, not. They had one hospital, and I couldn't find it, and I got some, and nobody understood what I wanted, and I finally found a guy on this, a kid, and he showed me, he knew, understood hospital, and he showed me, and I got off, and I told somebody there, nobody understood what I was talking about. They were playing basketball in the middle of the hospital, which was a round circle with rooms in it, and I went over there, and they didn't know nothing about it, so they went back to basketball playing, and I started going in every room in the hospital, and I found her laying on a slab in the hospital. And then the angel told us that I gave away my motorcycle because they said, "Hey, if you do this, we'll get you out of here quick." And they ripped me off, and the angel came to our rescue and said, "Get out of here. You got to leave now." And we found a guy that was a cemetery guy, you know, what do you call him?
Caretaker.
A caretaker, yeah. And he made a casket for us, and we put it on top of the cab, and we went to Mexico City. And we got out of there we didn't get our papers signed that we were waiting to do because we left town and we didn't have the proper papers, and they were going to arrest us if we got to Mexico City. But I knew the airline business, and we ran through and got to America, and things were taken care of later. It was amazing. I even loaded her on because I knew, they thought I was somebody working with the airlines. I even knew people because I worked with that airline.
So
Anyway,
got her back home.
So we got there, and then all of a sudden I ended up in this place, and this is where my father-in-law lived, and he was a scientist, and he had gone and used the Navy to collect an esoteric library from all over, and he had several thousands of volumes, over 30, probably 50,000. And I landed in a place in a state of shock with all this knowledge that I never even thought about, and I didn't have nothing else to do. And he fed me. He put books down to see if I had any desires at all. And it awakened me. It was like reading the Bible or being saved or anything else. Look, you thought you knew because you got saved and you did everything that Baptist told you to do, I taught Sunday school. I didn't know nothing. I found out I knew absolutely nothing. And I learned that I was an idiot. And the more knowledge you have of anything, you'll find out how much of an idiot you are, because you don't know much. We don't know much until we learn about ourselves. And if you observe yourself, you will see that we do habits. We don't even operate on imagination. We live in the past and the future, and they don't exist. The only thing that exists is now. And when you do now, you get to do art. Look all around here. This is all just a thought, and then you bring it down to now and you start. And then all of a sudden you got something and it goes kaplunk. And all of a sudden you can draw a picture the same way. And you can do music the same way. And that's what this place is. It's a school of creativity. And we are talking about it now. And I'm Larry Whidden, and I had the opportunity to fall into accident, into wisdom, which the only thing we can do is read a little bit about it, and then after you learn something, then put the books away and practice. And then you will see the magic as it comes, like music, a beautiful song. How does that all happen? Because it comes from the Spirit, and the Spirit shall guide us. And that's what happens here in this magical place of Costa d'Angelo.